Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that the Sleeve Chief Summer Sale is still going on, and for another 3 days, you're going to be getting 15% off with my code SHADOW if you purchase anything. And on Sunday night, the code is reverted back to only 5% discount. So if you want to have any, if you want to make any last minute purchases, make sure to do so now so you can save more money. And for today's video, we're going to be talking about how to beat Purrely. So obviously the deck has been out since winter, literally, of this year, but the support from Duelist Nexus really pushed it over the edge because now it's able to easily go first or second, something that it was struggling with before. So I think we all need to refresh our knowledge about how to beat Purrely, and I compiled a list of a lot of different going first and second cards. And if you have any others, when you're done watching this video, if you feel like there's something I haven't mentioned, make sure to share it in the comments down below. And if you do like the video and overall these types of videos, make sure to like it and let me know that as well. And yeah, for the first card, we're just gonna go through a couple hand traps first, and even if they aren't as impactful, I'm still going to be mentioning them so you know what to expect, because right now we're all playing a lot of hand traps, so you want to use them to the best of your ability, essentially. The first one is going to be Ash, and Ash isn't the most impactful card against the deck, but it's very generic, so a lot of people play it. And it's important to note that you can Ash their quick play spell cards, of course, but they don't discard for cost, so you don't really make them neg a lot, unless it's a simplified game state, or if you want to Ash their monsters effects where they excavate or search, which you can also do, but that really depends on the game state, and a lot of times you're also going to be playing into talents or thrust with those types of cards, which isn't ideal. So I wanted to mention it because it's generic, but it's not the greatest one. And the next one we're going to be talking about is Joel, which also Joel is kind of weird because sometimes it just feels like it's a little better to use it on your turn when they're trying to go for 4 draws, sometimes even 6 draws, because they don't chain and stack. When they go for the first draw, you can draw them and they don't get any other ones, but then you need to keep in mind that you're also under Joel, and if you're trying to use it on their turn, they can just do a lot of stuff in the draw phase, so Joel is also not going to be as impactful. And also, speaking of cards that may not be as great if they do their stuff in draw phase, is negation type of effects, and now I'm mostly focusing on Veiler because obviously it can only be used in the main phase. And just talking about Impermanence, Veiler, and Mourner as this group of negation effects, they're not bad at all, but the only thing that's kind of annoying is their field spell, because their monsters, when they are special summoned, cannot be targeted, and that's horrible to deal with, especially if you don't know and you're thinking you're gonna imperm something or Veiler something and it just doesn't work. It's kind of lame. So they do have impact, but a lot of times you just won't be able to use them, which isn't ideal, but I still wanted to talk about those cards as well, because sometimes they are going to be useful. It's not like they're going to have the field spell up every single time, but some people even play 3 because it is really busted, so it just kind of depends. Another one that's not amazing but still has a couple applications is Ogre, and mostly it's great against my friend Purrely and also the Purrely monsters when they're trying to XYZ, because you pop them, you remove them, the XC summon doesn't happen, which is great. But again, we have a but. Every single time there's gonna be a but. I'm just gonna say it right now. The deck is kind of there's a lot of side deck cards that are good against it, but every single time there's gonna be a situation where they're gonna have a side card prepared. Another thing to think about, actually, now that I'm mentioning targeting effects, some people consider playing Sauravis, the Ancient and Ascended, I think it's called, in their main deck to avoid targeting. So that's another one, another form of the field spell, which is gonna go around your targeting effects, which is also annoying, but we were mentioning Ogre. So Ogre can hit my friend Purrely and the Purrelys, but the happy memory is going to make it so the first time something will be destroyed by card effect, it's not, so it's essentially a protection effect. So if they have it, you just nagged, and that really sucks. And another one that's not seeing as much play actually is Reaper, which you can use Reaper if you want, if you have an extra deck that can actually afford to do so. But a lot of times decks just aren't like that. Most of them really need their entire extra deck. So you can use Reaper, you can get rid of Noir if you want, but it's not gonna be realistic a lot of times. Another card that actually has a lot of impact, finally, is Shifter. So if you can play a deck that plays Shifter and you can play under it, you may want to use it, precisely because if you compare Shifter to Retaliating Sea, which Retaliating Sea isn't bad, and it is an extra we're going to talk about, but Retaliating Sea puts the body on board. So if you play into Thrust, it's going to kind of suck for you because you have a body on the board, so they're going to be able to utilize thrust, and a lot of builds actually play it. Shifter is kind of better, but Retaliating C is also not bad at all, but they kind of have ways of dealing with it. You are forcing them to do so, which is not bad. Like, they have to like either bounce it or flip it or do something to it because it is going to hinder them. Sometimes they can try to play under it, but it's not going to be ideal. Another C card, which is not bad if they don't have any outs, is Contact C. But, you know, a lot of people also play stuff like Azalea and also Nightmare Monsters in their extra decks. So it's not going to be that easy to just slap a Contact C on their board and hope they don't have anything, because a lot of times they will have outs, especially if they are specifically preparing for these types of cards. So let's talk about some other cards in general. The book cards aren't bad at all, specifically Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse, because obviously face down monsters cannot be used for a C summon. And if they, during your turn, try to go into the Purrely Leap, you can just chain the book and book the monster and nothing is gonna happen. It's not amazing because they are getting at least a couple draws, because usually they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna get a couple draws, then go leap and then get a couple more. So they are aiming for about 4 to 6 draws, and they are gonna get some. So if you won't be able to completely like just kill them and their turn, it's not gonna be great because they have a lot of recursion with the field spell My Friend Purrely. But something to keep in mind is that My Friend Purrely actually activates when a face-up Xyz monster leaves, so that's great if it is booked. But again, it depends if you only booked one monster and they still have something else. If you Book of Eclipse the entire field, it really depends on their board and your board as well. But in general, book cards aren't bad. And another card I wanted to mention is Forbidden Lands. Also, this one is not going to see play in every single deck, but Kashira did use it. And if you make a monster unaffected, they're not going to be able to upgrade with Purrely Leap. So that's also nice, but, you know, it is kind of specific for Kashtira. So let's talk about a couple going first cards. One of them is going to be D-Barrier, probably like the best one. You collect C's and you're good. Also, something to keep in mind is D-Barrier puts a lingering effect on the board, so it's actually able to affect Noir because it's not an activated effect. So that's really, really important. You also have Anti-Spell, which isn't bad, but they probably have a way of dealing with it if they have a Nightmare Monster or a Zeus, so you kind of have to like protect it. Skill Drain is another one that's a continuous effect, so it's also able to negate Noir, and that's great. You have There Can Be Only One, which cannot be played in every single deck, but if you have a strategy like Branded, for example, if you play Branded and you have like, you establish your board and you still have a couple disruptions, and then There Can Be to like have it on top of everything else, you're probably able to effectively stop their push 100% of the time. But still, you know, they can have like some kind of removal for your floodgates. But, you know, you're not only relying on that when you're going first. A couple other ones would be Chain Disappearance, which this one is so cool to me because it's an Edison card. So I like the fact that it can see play. Now, I personally hate it because people always banish my Treeborn Frogs, but that's besides the point. The card isn't bad, it's just kind of a little too specific maybe, because it's not going to be used in any kind of other matchup. So if you want to dedicate a couple slots specifically to Purrely, I understand that, but still you may want to use a couple other cards which would actually see play in other matchups as well. You have Magic Deflector, which isn't bad either. And I think that's it for the going first cards. And moving on to the going second cards, obviously you have Kaijus, Lava Golem, Santa Claus as well. Kurikara is also nice. And all of these ones are going to be some of the best ways to deal with their Noir specifically, or more monsters, which they might do. So Lava Golem becomes more useful. But again, there is a but. They do play Vanity's Fiend. They also play Rivalry, because obviously they're going to get prepared. Wow. If you hear rumbling, like we've been having storms and floods and a lot of stuff in the recent days, so it's kind of wild out there. And yeah, they can play Rivalry and also Vanity's Fiend to just avoid getting hit by those cards. So yeah, it's not great. Obviously, they're gonna do everything that's in their power to make sure those cards don't hurt them. So that's something you need to think about. But they aren't bad at all. So if you're able to Kaiju a Noir, you should be good. But like I said before, they're going to get some kind of recursion with the field spell and My Friend Purrely. So you also need to either make an insane board or just OTK them outright. So that's another thing. And as for other going second cards, you have XYZ Encore and also Herald of the Abyss. So these ones are like the go-to cards to deal with Noir, but both of them have downsides as well. So XYZ Encore is great because with the effect, you're actually affecting materials. And when Noir doesn't have any more materials, it is affected again, so it can get bounced to the extra deck. But they are getting all the other materials back, which were monsters, so they can get their effects on summon. And it's not that great. The downside to Encore is that you have to target the monster. If they have a field spell, you're not going to be able to do that. And with Herald of the Abyss, I like it because it makes it so you play 1 copy and then 3 Thrust if you play Thrust in your deck. So this is just an additional target for Thrust. And essentially you have 4 copies of Herald of the Abyss, but you can also play anything else that you want for Thrust. And that's nice immediately. But there is a downside to Herald of the Abyss, which is very interesting. It's actually that if they have a quick play spell card, they can just keep it, save it for later. They can use it, summon the Lily, which is also a Dark Fairy, and then they just send that away. And they keep the Noir, so they literally outplay you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So both of those spell cards have a couple of downsides, but they're also very useful if they go through. So you just need to decide for yourself if you want to play them. Okay, some other random cards are Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, which can use Noir, and also if you go, some decks usually like to go IP into Underworld Goddess, which is also doable with Noir because IP's effect doesn't affect any monsters. It's just an effect that Link summons, and at the point of like resolving the effect, and actually immediately after it resolves, then you perform the summon, and it's just part of the summoning condition of the goddess, so Noir can be used. Also Baguska, that's also not an activated effect, just like we talked about with Skill Drain, D-Barrier, etc. And cards like Cosmic Cyclone aren't bad if you want to force the trap card, because then they won't have multiple draws. And also some of the builds play Rivalry, so if you know you struggle against those floodgates, Cosmic might be useful in that regard as well. And also just getting rid of My Friend Purrely and the field spell is gonna do you a lot of good. My Friend Purrely is busted. Literally gets you to a whole bunch of resources, so you might want to get rid of it as well. And to round this video off, I wanted to mention a couple of decks that actually have inherent outs to Noir in themselves. One of them is going to be Branded, because the Mirror Jade effect, very similar to Psychic and Punisher and Underworld Goddess and other effects, it activates and resolves, and then when it's resolving the pop effect in the end phase, it's not an activated effect anymore, so it can actually destroy Noir. So Branded is on the list. Another one is Flunder, because the Unexplored Winds is also not an activated effect. It's just part of the summoning condition, and you send the monster away, so it's also able to go around the Noir protection. Then we also have Rika, because Con contributes for costs, so again, not an activated effect. And the last one, a very cool tech that literally found out about a couple of days ago, is the Tiger King Wangu in any kind of beast deck or the Brand Chimera deck, because you can summon it out and it's just busted against Purrely. It's just what it is, and I really like that tech, so I wanted to mention it. And with that, I think I gave you a lot of ideas in this video, so if there are any more, please feel free to mention them. But yeah, Purrely is going to be in the meta, and it is going to be kind of hard to deal with. They amass a ton of resources, they can OTK very easily, and it's not ideal, but it does look like an interesting and fun deck as well. But you know, it doesn't really seem like an extremely toxic deck, so it's not bad having that in the meta as opposed to something else. So yeah, if you like the video, make sure to like it, share all your thoughts in the comments, use my code SHADOW for any last minute purchases, and get 15% off at Sleeve Chief, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.